What is happening, people? NGS back again for another video. Welcome to 2019. That is right, ladies and gentlemen. This is the very first video recorded in the new year. And unlike most individuals who would take this time and list off all of the goals that they want to accomplish by the end of the year, we're going to be a bit more realistic and start out with a rant, because if there's one thing that is guaranteed year in and year out from this channel, your boy Neo has got to get something off his chest. And by that, I do not mean Black Panther, because I am eagerly looking forward to the sequel. Just hope they fix the CGI this time. We are starting out the new year ranting about a company that I hold very near and dear to my heart. Is this another Final Fantasy 15 rant? Oh shit, no it isn't. We're actually talking about another franchise put out by Square Enix, but it's not a rant in the traditional sense. I'm not here talking about Kingdom Hearts 3 per se, but I am going to address a pretty big problem that has been going on in the community for such a long time, but only now has it reared its ugly head onto the surface and people are actually calling it out for what it is. And by that, I'm referring to the recent discourse within the Kingdom Hearts community. Basically, what started out this whole, I guess you could say, war between the Kingdom Hearts fans and the Kingdom Hearts lesser fans, if that's a term, is that a couple of people were expressing their concerns about Kingdom Hearts 3. As you guys know, we are currently 3 weeks out from the release of the game, and some of these people had, I guess you could say, less than charitable things to say about Kingdom Hearts 3. Overall, though, their comments were positive. They just had some reservations, as you should for a game that's been in development for practically an entire generation. Do y'all not realize that we have been waiting 6 years from the original announcement of Kingdom Hearts 3? Yeah, I would have some reservations. And shout out to my homie Sora Lamb Deem. I've met him on multiple occasions, whether it's Comic-Con or E3. He's a really awesome dude, genuine, down to earth. But one thing that he's come under fire for recently was having the mindset, like, how dare this man have reservations about Kingdom Hearts 3 and how it potentially could not live up to some of the high standards we fans have for the series. Now, I'm not going to make this video a discussion on whether or not Kingdom Hearts 3 will live up to Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix from a gameplay standpoint. I know that's what you guys want me to do, but I want to do something a bit more constructive. I want to address a problem that I've been seeing in the Kingdom Hearts community for the better part of 10 years. Yes, I have been on YouTube for, well, actually, at the end of November, I've been on YouTube for 11 years now. Jesus Christ. And I've noticed a lot of things, and I really wanted to take a video to address it because it's a problem that has existed for a long time, but no one has really ever wanted to address it. And if they have, they've been shunned out of the community. What I'm referring to is the Kingdom Hearts community, for the most part, cannot handle criticism for the franchise. If you have a dissenting opinion about the series for whatever reason, brace yourselves, because you are not going to hear the end of it. Now, we've seen this time in and time out, and let's be honest here. Keep it 100. We've all been that dude who says, hey, you just don't understand this amazing franchise that is Kingdom Hearts. You just think it looks goofy because it has Goofy in it. Don't lie to yourselves. We've all been there. We've been that person to damage control for Kingdom Hearts, because let's be honest, some of the outsiders looking in on Kingdom Hearts, yeah, they can come to some prejudices. And to be honest, while I think that some of those are unfounded and they don't hold any weight, I'm not going to sit here and say that those people are really particularly wrong for having those sort of prejudices. Because as a whole, when it comes to Kingdom Hearts, the longer you are a fan, the harder job it becomes to defend the series for all of its, well, faults, if you will. So let's take this back to the beginning. Let's talk about Kingdom Hearts as a series, as a concept, as it pertains to the way in which the games were released. You had Kingdom Hearts 1 on the PlayStation 2, came out in 2002. Pretty simple game overall. It didn't really try to reinvent the wheel of what it meant to be a game. It was a simple game that for the most part had a simple story, had a decent combat system. Were there things that could be improved upon in Kingdom Hearts 1? Yes, there were, which is why they spent the time and effort to give us Kingdom Hearts Not 2, because we got Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories on the Game Boy Advance. This right here is actually the first part of the problem when it came to the franchise. Yeah, if you weren't willing to shell out hundreds upon hundreds of dollars for multiple systems, yeah, you weren't going to experience this story the way it was meant to be seen, because Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, which for all intents and purposes is Kingdom Hearts 2, because it is the next chapter in the story, but not really. It was on the Game Boy Advance with a completely different playstyle. But then, a few years later, you move into Kingdom Hearts 2, which, if you didn't play Chain of Memories, you would be shit out of luck at trying to comprehend this story. Well, you can sit there and read through all of Jiminy's journals, and if you were lucky to have a friend at the time to explain to you what would be this, oh god, the origin of the convoluted story, you really wouldn't get the full experience of Kingdom Hearts. Unless you were just a fan of action games, which Kingdom Hearts 2 was a pretty competent action game. So after you finish up Kingdom Hearts 2, you're thinking to yourself, oh my god, I cannot wait to see what the next chapter of this story is. They left on a pretty good cliffhanger. You watch the secret movies and you're thinking, dog, Kingdom Hearts 3 coming out on the PlayStation 3? I am so excited. I am hyped for this. What is the next game of the series? You've got Kingdom Hearts 358 by 2 days on the Nintendo DS. Yeah. Another platform you have to buy to play this one game in the series that's not really a sequel, but it's not really a prequel, but it is a prequel because it takes place in between these games, so I guess you can call it a mid-prequel. What? Following that game, you had the next major installment in the Kingdom Hearts series, which was, yeah, another prequel on the PlayStation Portable, Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. Another system that if you didn't shell out the hundreds upon hundreds of dollars for, you were shit out of luck out of understanding the story. Great. And sprinkled in somewhere between both of these games, you had Kingdom Hearts Coded, which was on, this isn't a good judge, considering it wasn't on a smartphone, but it was on phones back in the day. Y'all remember Kingdom Hearts Coded? I think it was exclusive to Verizon back in the day, at least in the States where you could play that game. Either way, they remade it on the Nintendo DS as Kingdom Hearts Recoded, which has about as much relevance to the Kingdom Hearts series as Superman does to the DCEU. Henry Cavill, you deserved so much freaking better. Okay guys, we've gotten out of hand at this point. Let's get on to the main meat and potatoes here. It is finally time. We got the PlayStation 3 out there. We are ready to experience Kingdom Hearts 3. And did we get Kingdom Hearts 3? Yes, we did. We got Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance. You can't make this shit up, man. But it was on the Nintendo 3DS, which again is another platform that you gotta shell out $200+ to play the game. This seems to be an ongoing trend here. Alright. I know what you guys are gonna say at this point. You're just making this an over-exaggeration, Neo. Did you not know? Were you not aware that they released compilations for the series? Yeah, we got Kingdom Hearts 1.5 on the PS3, which brought together 3 games technically, and then you had 2.5 on the PS3, which brought together 2 games, because Coded does not exist. So Kingdom Hearts 3 is officially announced in 2013. We've got PlayStation 4 on the horizon, so the only logical game that would come out for this franchise would be the next installment, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, we finally did get the next installment in Kingdom Hearts 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue. I grow tired of this, Nomura. And this right here is literally where I almost wanted to check out from the series, because how much more could you milk out of this franchise than releasing Dream Drop Distance, a prologue for Kingdom Hearts 3, and then a cutscene theater for $60, man? Y'all people bought this shit? And then Kingdom Hearts 1.5 and 2.5 were ported to the PlayStation 4, and then they were ported to the PlayStation 4 again with Kingdom Hearts The Story Thus Far, which included 2.8 and all the other games in the series for a low price of $40. And now we finally have Kingdom Hearts 3 coming out in just a few short weeks. Now I bet you guys are asking yourselves, Neo, why did you spend literal minutes talking about the entire franchise, the games, the platforms they released on? What relevance could this hold to the video talking about the Kingdom Hearts fanbase and why there's a problem that exists in the fanbase? Because that right there illustrates the type of dedication and passion that is necessary to be a fan of the Kingdom Hearts series. I'm sorry you guys, but not everybody on the face of the frickin' earth has the disposable funds, has just the drive and passion to go out there and buy different systems to play different parts of the story of an ongoing series that for all intents and purposes could have been on the mainline consoles. Like, this isn't a case of them going out there and doing like a side story for a character that really didn't matter to the franchise. Like, you can do some of that stuff on handhelds, but when you put games like Birth by Sleep and Dream Drop Distance on 2 completely different separate ecosystems and tie enough relevance in the story that it becomes mandatory. Hold on one second, my mom is calling. What's up, Mom? All it takes is a phone call from your mom to derail this video. Up until the year 2018, you could not in good conscience recommend someone get involved in the Kingdom Hearts franchise. Why? Because in order to fully experience it the way it was intended, you had to go out there and buy a PlayStation 2, a Nintendo Game Boy Advance, a Nintendo DS, a Nintendo 3DS, a PlayStation Portable, and if you wanted to get all of the in-depth, behind-the-scenes stuff and play the games in the best possible quality, you had to buy a PlayStation 3. And then to play Final Chapter Prologue, you had to buy a PlayStation 4. So at the bare minimum, up until the story thus far, you had to own 7 platforms to play Kingdom Hearts. Now, yes, some of those games really didn't matter to the story. You could have read up on it. Yes, you could have waited for these games to come out as the HD compilations, but those HD compilations that were coming out didn't come out until the series had matured into what it was. By the time you had gotten the first HD compilation on the PlayStation 3, which was in 2013, you still had multiple games on the handhelds that you had to get invested in. So the reason why I brought up Kingdom Hearts and its janky release schedule is because no other franchise on the face of the earth has you going out there and spending so much money to experience different parts of the story that are really relevant. If you're going to sit here and say that Birth by Sleep's story is not relevant to Kingdom Hearts 3 at all, and you can skip it because you want to deflate the cost of entry that comes with being a Kingdom Hearts fan, you're lying to yourself. You know it. What other franchise has you waiting literally 16 years for you to collect all the games on one particular franchise to play the same story? No, this isn't like a random side game that they put out on a handheld that tells the story of, I don't know, random passenger who likes sea salt ice cream and how he's somehow related to the plot. No, this isn't that at all. This is vital stuff to the story. And so when you have people out there who played Kingdom Hearts 1 and played Kingdom Hearts 2 because they had a PS2 and they got a PS4 and they're interested in Kingdom Hearts 3 because in their mind they're thinking like, okay, cool, the first game in the series, the second game in the series, I'm gonna jump into the third game in the series. This fan base literally attacks them like no tomorrow and says that you are not a real fan if you have not dedicated X amount of time in your life to play every single game in the series. I'm sorry, but not every single person on the face of the earth is going to have all of the time and, of course, the disposable income to want to go out there and buy 7 different systems to play all of these games. That is a fault of the series, and that is a fault of Square Enix for not better handling how this series has evolved and progressed. I honestly don't blame a person for wanting to jump into Kingdom Hearts 3 after playing the first 2 games, because logic would dictate the third game in the series should pick up after the events of the second game in the series, not after the events of this side game in the series that's a prequel, and then also this game that is also a sequel to Kingdom Hearts 2, but it's not really a sequel to Kingdom Hearts 2 because it doesn't have that much relevance to a sequel to Kingdom Hearts 3, but we're gonna put in this really important stuff at the end of the game, but in theory, all that stuff might not matter at the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 3 depending on how they address it. You guys get what I'm trying to say here? Take one of my favorite series on the face of the freaking earth, Devil May Cry. Yes, it's another game coming out from Japan. Yeah, Devil May Cry 1 on the PS2, Devil May Cry 2 on the PS2, Devil May Cry 3 on the PS2, Devil May Cry 4 on the PS3. Nothing else happened from the years of 2008 up until 2019, and then you have Devil May Cry 5 on the PlayStation 4. All of those games were brought together under the sun onto the PlayStation 4 with the Devil May Cry HD Collection and Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition. But one common denominator that existed, if you were a fan of this series, you for the most part got 3 games out of one system. You had the 4th game on PS3 and then the 5th game on PlayStation 4. So owning 3 systems to play 5 games in the series versus owning 7 systems to play every single game in a franchise. Now, I say all this stuff to illustrate a point. If you are not willing to invest the time, the money, the resources, everything out there under the sun to really dedicate your life into Kingdom Hearts, you are not getting the full experience. But it goes further beyond that, because it's not just the fact that you had to go out there and play all the separate games. You had to go out there and actually dig deep into the lore of the games to get a full understanding, because, oh no, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot understand the full story of Kingdom Hearts just playing it from cover to cover. You gotta go in there and you gotta read all of those journals. You gotta go in there and do so much to get somewhat of a better grasp and semblance of this really, oh boy, we're getting into deep, dark, murky territory right now. I will be the first person on the face of the earth to admit that Kingdom Hearts really doesn't have the best written story, like, ever. And that's been one of the major complaints that people have had when it came to enjoying the game, because the story is just so convoluted. The more time you get on with it, it's really frustrating. And then when you combine that with the fact that you have all these other games that are telling important parts of the story, let's just address the elephant in the room. This guy right here, the fact that it's dealing with time travel. Oof. The second you introduce time travel into any ongoing story is a recipe for disaster. I really gotta wonder, what are they doing on those Monday morning conference calls after Tetsuya Nomura sends over what he's doing? I mean, to me it just seems like, yeah, alright, it seems good. Go for it. So while we've established it takes a lot to be a fan of Kingdom Hearts, there is another subset when talking about Kingdom Hearts and critiquing it as a whole, and this is something that I see a lot of people who, even if they aren't a fan of the story per se, they can actually have a word in, and that has to do with the gameplay. The Kingdom Hearts series has seen various differences throughout all the games in the series, and of course there are reasons to that. You know, going from a console to a handheld, of course there are going to be some limitations. They'd have to change up the gameplay style. But if you're going from Kingdom Hearts 1 to Kingdom Hearts 2, yes, it is a pretty drastic difference, but you can still get your way around the game. But if you're going from something like Kingdom Hearts 1 to Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, and then going from something like Kingdom Hearts 2 to Birth by Sleep, there are completely different playstyles that exist between them. You know, using the command deck and using those skills versus actually being able to execute the skills on your own. If you are a Kingdom Hearts fan, it might not seem like that big of a deal, but if you are a person on the outside then having to adjust to all these different styles to the point that when Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out, it reverts back to this old style that you haven't played since 2006, yeah, it's going to be a little jarring. And one thing I think a lot of Kingdom Hearts fans need to understand at the end of the day, sure, you can have your personal preferences on what game is best in the series. You might prefer Birth by Sleep and Dream Drop Distance over Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that your opinion is wrong at all because it's your experience of the game. However, the sheer fact that we are having those conversations is something that does not need to be shut down. If you are a fan of the series and you're looking at Kingdom Hearts 3 and you think it's going to be better in some aspects as opposed to the other games in the series but might not live up to it from a gameplay standpoint, that is a fair and logical assertion to have, especially when some of these people have actually gotten hands-on to play the games at various events. It is something that can be said. Of course, we're all going to have to wait for the game to come out to play it in its full capacity, but there is no problem out there for expressing some concerns, especially for a game that we have been waiting close to 6 years for since its initial announcement. That right there, yeah, that was one of my major critiques back in the day of Square Enix. The way that they were handling the release of these games wasn't really the best, but again, I got criticized for saying those things back then, but it's kind of funny now how everything is coming full circle, but I digress. Here we are at the end of this long, overblown video that could have been summed up in about 7 minutes, but I know for a fact this has gone well over 7 minutes. I apologize, Wesker. You can be excited for Kingdom Hearts 3 while also remaining critical of it. If we were not critical about the things that we love, that is how our favorite series end up stagnating and becoming the same thing over and over and over again. God of War just came out last year and it addressed so many of the problems that people had from a narrative standpoint. They were complaining about the character of Kratos and how he's just this angry man who yells all the time and swings his blades around, and that seems to solve all his problems. So what did they do? They took all of that feedback into account. They took 5 years and they crafted one of the most immersive narratives in all of gaming from a franchise that still exists, in a franchise that is still going and telling new chapters of the story. That is how you get shit done. And that is what we should be doing for the Kingdom Hearts series, because Kingdom Hearts is not perfect. There are a lot of things that could be fixed within the franchise. Not just talking from a gameplay point of view, but we're talking about from a narrative structure, we're talking about from a release cycle. There's a lot of things in the series that can be addressed that we don't have to sit back and just say, well, this is what they're doing, we gotta accept it. As a fan for a franchise for almost 20 years, I'm not just gonna sit back and be silent about these sort of things. I personally do think that there is a lot of improvement for the Kingdom Hearts series. And like I've always mentioned before, these companies are always listening. They're on Twitter because these developers are people too. They want to hear your excitement, but they also want to hear your criticisms on how they can do better and evolve. And who's to say that Kingdom Hearts 4, whatever story it takes, maybe that'll be the start of a more cohesive franchise from a narrative standpoint. Maybe going forward, they might give us things that we've been wanting for a while, such as online multiplayer, such as co-op. Because if anyone who has played Birth by Sleep on the PSP would know, that Mirage Marina went hard, and it's something that could, with a couple of tweaks, be worked on for a home console release. Who's to say we won't get that in the next installment? I'm not going to sit here and try to change your mind on the series. Most people are pretty much set in their ways, but we got to stop this whole mindset of just gatekeeping and closing off what it means to be a fan, and people who are expressing their concerns about a series. It is justified with Kingdom Hearts. This isn't a case of, well, you know, you're just kind of being too harsh and critical here. No, there's some legit grievances that come with being a Kingdom Hearts fan, and that's why I can't fault a person for saying the things they do about Kingdom Hearts. Because on some level, they are at least partially right. Anyways, I have rambled on long enough, ladies and gentlemen. From me to you for now, my name is NGS signing out. Like always, I catch you guys later.